please hit that subscribe button.
Hey everybody.
Better suited to win the Stanley Cup this season. If you are new to the channel, Washington Capitals, the Boston Bruins.
Locked on and he scored! And we're live. Hey everybody. So today I want to talk about injuries, particularly how injuries are affecting certain playoff teams very, very much, or teams fighting for a playoff spot. There's a lot of teams right now getting hit hard by the injury bug, and I'm going to look at 7 of those teams in this video who I think are being hit the hardest. Now, before we start, I just quickly want to remind everyone to please hit that subscribe button and follow along for all of my hockey content, and give this video a thumbs up if you haven't already. Those likes really go a long way in helping the channel and are very much appreciated. So, obviously, every team is affected by injuries throughout the season. But certainly some teams get it worse than others, and right now we are seeing a number of teams have significant injury problems right here at the end of the season. Some of these injuries will even carry over into the playoffs if they make the postseason. So they're getting hit with it bad right now, and we're gonna take a look at some injury reports. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to right now look at 7 playoff teams, or fighting for a playoff spot teams in one case, who are being severely impacted by injuries right now. Okay, everybody, so the first team I want to talk about is the Carolina Hurricanes. They are currently not in a playoff spot, but I wanted to include them on this list because I think they're going to make the playoffs this year. They're only 3 points back. They've got games in hand on their opponents, and I do think that Carolina finds a way to get into the postseason this year. But as you can see, Carolina is absolutely devastated with injuries on the back end and in goal right now. Dougie Hamilton has been out with a broken leg since January 15th. It's been a long time now without Dougie Hamilton, who is one of their top defensemen. And he's been out for a while now. That's a big loss on the back end for them. Obviously, they made some trades at the deadline to try and improve their defense core, but not having Hamilton, who's really a top pair guy for them, is obviously a big loss, and he's missed significant time. Sami Vatanen, one of those guys that they did pick up at the trade deadline in a trade with New Jersey, has not yet played for Carolina. He has been injured since February 2nd, and he is on IR with a leg injury. So, another injury on the back end there. Vatanen hopefully will be back soon and able to suit up for Carolina. I mean, they didn't trade for him for no reason. So they are expecting him at some point to be able to suit up and help this team in the final month of the season here. But yeah, he's out right now, so that's another injury to the back end. And Brett Pesce, who was injured against Toronto on February 21st, he's on IR with a shoulder injury, and that appears to be a long-term injury for Brett Pesce. So he's probably their best, if not their best defensive defenseman in that lineup. That's a huge loss for them defensively. In Brett Pesce, and he's been out for a few weeks now, and it looks like he's still going to be out going forward. Both goaltenders as well. The injuries just keep piling on here for Carolina. Both goaltenders as well. James Reimer and Peter Mrazek are both out injured, have not played since February 21st. In that game, the famous David Ayers emergency goalie game, where they both got injured. They haven't played since. Lower body injury for Reimer, concussion for Mrazek. Hopefully at least one of those guys gets back soon. I think I've heard Mrazek is about 7 to 10 days away, and then he'll be back in net for Carolina. So that will be a nice get for Carolina to get him back in goal. But man, Carolina fighting for a playoff spot, currently on the outside looking in, but really getting hit hard with injuries right now, particularly on defense and in goal. Moving on now to the next team I want to talk about, the Colorado Avalanche. The Colorado Avalanche, look at this injury list, guys. Colin Wilson has missed most of this season. I'm not even going to talk about him that much because he's missed most of this season. Nazem Kadri, that is a huge loss. Second-line center for Colorado. He's been out since the beginning of February. Lower body injury. Has not played since. That's a massive loss for the Avalanche, and they've missed him in that lineup a lot because he plays a big role on that team. Matt Calvert, really, really good depth guy, also hasn't played since mid-February. He's on IR with a lower body injury. Philip Grubauer, their starting goaltender, out since February. He got injured, actually, I believe, on February 15th in the Stadium Series game of TSN. Get your dates right here. It was the Stadium Series game that Philip Grubauer got injured in on February 15th, and he's been out since then with a lower body injury. Pavel Francouz has been the starting goalie for the last about 3 weeks here. Huge one. Absolutely huge one. Mikko Rantanen, one of their absolute best players, on IR with a major upper body injury. I believe the timetable on that was 8 to 10 weeks. And that happened also in mid-February, so we're not even a month into that. Mikko Rantanen will not be back for the start of the playoffs, most likely. Colorado is going to probably have to get into the playoffs, into maybe even the second round, before we see Mikko Rantanen again on the ice for the Avalanche. And he's one of their absolute top players, so that is a massive, massive loss. Then we've got a couple of day-to-day injuries. Andrei Burakovsky and Cale Makar. Both day-to-day, one with Burakovsky with a lower body injury, Makar with an upper body injury. Both did not play last night. Burakovsky's had a great year for the Colorado this season, a really solid year for him offensively. Makar, we all know about Cale Makar and the great dynamic defenseman that he is in his rookie season, but he's out right now. He did not play last night. That's a huge loss. So this list for Colorado is absolutely massive. It's insane to me that Colorado is still second in the Western Conference, only behind St. Louis in the West, with all of these injuries and all of these guys. Significant players, too, like Kadri and Rantanen and Burakovsky and Makar. Significant players missing time, and Colorado is still right there with St. Louis, second in the Western Conference. Absolutely incredible on their part. And we don't have to go far for the next team I want to talk about, the Columbus Blue Jackets. This team is absolutely ravaged with injuries right now. Brandon Dubinsky has been, out the entire. I mean, he hasn't really played this season. Josh Anderson, major injury, shoulder injury for Anderson. Alexander Texier out a long time as well. Anderson actually just had surgery that was shutting him down for the rest of this season, I believe. Dean Kukin on the back end, depth defenseman, just another guy, torn meniscus in his knee. That's an injury that absolutely, he's not a star player or anything like that, but that takes away from your defensive depth. Cam Atkinson out, Seth Jones out as well. That's two huge losses. Oliver Bjorkstrand, it has him listed at day-to-day. He has a fractured ankle. I believe the timetable on him was 8 to 10 weeks, and that just happened a couple weeks ago. So Bjorkstrand out long-term. Elvis Merzlikins, the great rookie goaltender who's having an incredible season this year. He's day-to-day with a concussion that just recently happened. Nathan Gerbe's day-to-day. I mean, we see the list for Colorado. Look at the list for Columbus, and they're fighting for their playoff lives right now. It's a massive injury list, and really important players too, like Texier, really good secondary scorer. Josh Anderson, important power forward for them. Done now probably for the season. Cam Atkinson, one of their top goal scorers. Seth Jones, their best defenseman, number one D-man, out with a fractured ankle. Bjorkstrand's a huge loss for them offensively and his goal-scoring ability. Merzlikins has had an incredible season. I mean, these are major injuries and significant players out of the lineup for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So it's going to be difficult for them to make the playoffs with this injury list. It's absolutely insane what they are going through right now. But we'll see. They're holding a playoff spot for now. We'll see if they can make it. So we got to scroll quite a ways down. A lot of these teams not hit too badly, or they're not playoff teams, so I'm not going to talk about them. But then we get to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And boy, the story of this season for Pittsburgh isn't injuries. This team has been battling it all season long. The fact that they're comfortably in a playoff spot, even with all the injuries, is just a huge showing of how good this team is, how deep this organization is, and how Pittsburgh continues to win year after year after year. Nick Bjugstad has not played in months. He's supposedly getting close to a return, so that's a good sign. He actually might play tonight even, I think. I think Sullivan said there's a chance he could play tonight, but he should be back soon at the very least. Jake Gensel has missed more than at least this entire second half of this season. So Gensel's been out long term with a major shoulder injury. So there's two huge losses there. Your third line center, your top line left wing, both out for significant portions of this season. Zach Aston-Reese, a solid depth guy, he's out injured right now and has been for the last few weeks. Dominic Simone just got injured with an upper body injury. He's out. Brandon Tanev's been sick. He'll be back soon. It's just an illness with him. Jack Johnson, he just had a son. He had a child born. That's why he's out. So not really on the injured list. Anthony Angelo, though, 2 to 4 week injury, I believe, for Angelo, another depth guy for Pittsburgh that that they've lost. So Aston-Reese and Angelo, two depth guys that they're down. Bjugstad, Gensel, huge important players for them. Gensel, a huge offensive player. Dominic Simone, a solid secondary scorer as well, all out. So Pittsburgh, even though it's not as bad injury-wise as it was at the beginning of the season, still getting absolutely hammered with injuries. And what you don't see here is that Brian Dumoulin and John Marino both were out for significant time with injuries and just came back into the lineup. So Pittsburgh did get a couple of defensemen back, which is huge for them in Dumoulin and Marino. But so it's nice to get them back, but they are still, getting hit hard with the injury bug here, as you can see. So moving on now, we've got a few more teams to talk about. One being the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, as you can see, the Tampa Bay Lightning don't have a lot of players on the injured list. 3, Jan Rutta, Ryan McDonagh, and Steven Stamkos. The thing with Tampa Bay, though, is who it is, not how many. Jan Rutta, solid depth defenseman. That's not a massive loss. Tampa's able to survive that. Ryan McDonagh has been a huge loss for this Lightning team defensively. They have not played well defensively since McDonagh has gone down, and that was at the beginning of February. Now, the good news is McDonagh should be back soon. He actually might play on Saturday night. So it looks like he's going to be back this week or at least next week at the latest, barring any setbacks at this point. They will be getting McDonagh back, but over the last month, McDonagh has been a huge loss for this team. They have not been the same defensively without him, and they need him back to help shore up that back end because he is a big part of that team's defense. And then Steven Stamkos, absolutely massive loss there for the Lightning. One of their top players, their captain, one of the best players in the NHL. He went down with a core muscle injury. I believe he needed surgery, so this is a long-term injury for Stamkos. Probably going to be the playoffs before we see him again. So that's a big loss. So with Tampa Bay, it's not how many are injured, it's who's injured. Losing McDonagh and Stamkos out of that lineup are two massive losses for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Moving on now to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Look at the injured list, particularly defensively with Toronto here. Now, throw away Clarkson and Horton. Those guys were never going to play. Their careers are over. They're just LTIR guys. So throw those away. But they're missing two important forwards in Ilya Mikheyev and Andreas Johnsson. Johnsson is done for the year. Mikheyev back at practice potentially. Could be maybe back before the end of the season. He's missed a lot of time out since December with he got his wrist cut by a skate. Very scary injury there. Very serious injury there. Mikheyev could be back before the end of the season, and we certainly could see him in the playoffs. But he's currently on the injured list and has missed the last few months. And Andreas Johnsson is done for the year. He's had knee surgery, 6-month recovery time. He is done for the year. So that's two secondary scorers out of the Maple Leafs lineup. But the real problem here for the Maple Leafs is on the back end. Morgan Riley, their number one overall defenseman, their top guy, out since January with a fractured foot. Jake Muzzin, their best defensive defenseman, has a fractured hand. Just happened a couple weeks ago. He's probably going to be out 4 to 6 weeks-ish. So he hopefully will come back before or right before the start of the playoffs, or maybe a little bit before, but still missing significant time there. And Cody Ceci, and I know Cody Ceci's not very good, and Leafs fans love to rag on every fan loves to rag on Cody Ceci because he's really, really bad in his own end. But still, that's another defenseman out of the lineup for Toronto, and which means that other players, AHL-level defensemen, guys have to be called up. Guys have to play more minutes than they should be, and Toronto's defense isn't good to begin with. Even when they're fully healthy, Toronto's not a good defensive team. Now to have 3 of your top 6 defensemen out of the lineup, those are huge losses for the Toronto Maple Leafs, especially Riley and Muzzin. Those are big-time losses. So injury bug hitting Toronto as well, particularly on the back end, and a secondary scoring loss as well with Mikheyev and Janssen out. And the final team I want to talk about here, number 7, the Vancouver Canucks, because boy are the Vancouver Canucks getting trashed with injuries right now, and it is severely hurting their playoff chances. They have fallen down now to a wild card spot. They are struggling recently. They've lost 4 in a row, and the big 2 here are Brock Besser and Jacob Markstrom. Brock Besser, one of their top goal scorers, one of their best young players, out of the lineup here since the beginning of February with a rib cartilage fracture. They need him back for the postseason. Jacob Markstrom as well, their starting goaltender, who is really the reason they've been as successful as they have been this year, has really carried this team this season, out with a lower body injury. They really, really need him back as soon as possible. Those are 2 huge losses there, and Vancouver is absolutely feeling those losses as they are struggling here down the stretch. They've also lost some good depth guys in Jay Beagle and Josh Lavo. Michael Furland has barely played this season with concussion issues, probably will not play again this season. He's had reoccurring concussion symptoms and a lot of head injury issues, so Furland's all done. That's a huge loss for them as far as having a big power forward in the lineup goes. Beagle and Lavo are solid depth forwards that are out of the lineup, and Tyler Myers day-to-day on the back end with an undisclosed injury that just happened beginning of March a couple days ago. That's a huge loss as well. Tyler Myers is a important defenseman for them. They went out and got him in free agency for a reason, and now he's out injured as well. Hopefully that's not a long-term thing for Vancouver, but man, those guys have gotten absolutely hammered with injuries right now, and that's really tough for them. They are struggling here, 4-game losing streak, and watching their playoff hopes really come down to the wire here, as they've got to fight for every point to stay in a playoff spot in the West. So with that, guys, there you have it. Those are the 7 teams I wanted to talk about who are really getting hurt by injuries right now. They're all playoff teams or fighting for a playoff spot, at least close to being a playoff team. And the injury bug is really having an impact and affecting their playoff chances. So with that, guys, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.